Welcome, travelers of the unknown. Tonight's story begins not with hope, but with impact. A luxury starship ripped open in the void, a man who never meant to be there, and a group of lives treated as cargo instead of people. What follows is not just survival against space, but a fight for choice, identity, and freedom. Stay with us as Ethan Cole's journey unfolds beyond the stars and into what it truly means to live. Metal screamed through the bones of Harem 1. The impact came without warning. A deep, gut-shaking thud that tore through the hull like a fist through glass. Ethan Cole never saw what hit them. One moment the corridor lights glowed warm and gold. The next, they exploded into strobing red emergency pulses. Gravity stuttered. His boots lost the floor. He slammed shoulder first into a wall panel as the ship lurched sideways. A palace turned into a falling coffin. Air roared past his ears, not wind, atmosphere bleeding through a pressure fracture somewhere nearby. The corridor stretched ahead. Elegant marble walls now split with hairline cracks, glowing faint blue, where energy seals struggled to hold. Warning sirens overlapped in rising layers, mechanical voices speaking over each other in clipped diagnostics. Hull breach. Sector Delta. Radiation spike detected. Ethan clawed for a railing as loose objects drifted past him in slow. Sickening arcs. A silver tray. A cushion. Droplets of water turning into floating beads. His pulse hammered louder than the alarms. This wasn't turbulence. This was damage. Real damage. Another shockwave rippled through the ship, and somewhere distant, something heavy tore loose with a metallic shriek that echoed through the structure like a dying animal. The alarms kept screaming, but the corridor ahead stood eerily untouched, like disaster had chosen its targets with care. Ethan pushed off the wall and drifted forward, fingers grazing polished surfaces that belonged in a royal palace. Not a dying spacecraft. Soft golden panels lined the ceiling, their glow flickering as power rerouted. The air smelled sterile, expensive and wrong, thinner with every breath. He rounded a curve and froze. Vast doors stood open, revealing a grand atrium stretching upward through multiple decks. Crystal light structures hung suspended in low gravity, swaying gently as if the ship itself breathed. Silken banners drifted like ghosts. No crew, no officers, no maintenance drones racing to contain the breach. Only silence between siren pulses. Then movement. Across the atrium floor, figures emerged from recessed chambers, tall silhouettes stepping into the flashing red light. Women. Dozens of them. Their skin shimmered in unfamiliar hues under the emergency glow. Eyes sharp, alert, assessing him as if he were the anomaly. Ethan felt it then, the truth pressing in heavier than vacuum outside. The ship wasn't empty. It was waiting. No one screamed. No one ran. The women simply watched him as the alarms pulsed red across their faces. Ethan swallowed, heart pounding, the echo of decompression still ringing in his ears. One of them stepped forward, silver-skinned, eyes calm, movements precise. She did not look afraid. She looked resigned. "This vessel is not a passenger liner," she said, voice steady even as the deck trembled. "It is an automated Imperial transport." Her gaze held his like a diagnostic scan. "You are not on the manifest." Ethan blinked. "Manifest? I booked a vacation." "You boarded a diplomatic convoy," she continued, unblinking. "We are political acquisitions, gifts, delivered to the Galactic Emperor." A distant boom shook dust from the ceiling. She didn't flinch. "There is no crew, no captain, only destination." Cold spread through Ethan's chest. "So, we turn around?" She almost smiled, but it held no warmth. "The navigation core is sealed. 10-year trajectory. No deviation." Another tremor rippled through the hull, and Ethan finally understood. They weren't travelers. They were cargo. The air tasted wrong before the alarms said it. Ethan felt it in the back of his throat. Thin, metallic, like breathing through fabric. Then the overhead panels shifted from red to pulsing amber, and a new tone cut through the chaos. Slower, heavier, final. Atmospheric loss detected. Agricultural sector compromised. Leora was already moving, bare feet silent against the polished floor. She ran toward a descending corridor that led to the hydroponic levels. Ethan followed, lungs working harder with every step. The doors opened to a wave of humid air that should have smelled green and alive. Instead, it carried a bitter edge of ionized metal. Inside the vast oxygen garden, whole sections had gone gray, leaves curled inward, black veins spreading across them like frost. A jagged scar split the dome ceiling, sealed by a flickering energy membrane that leaked faint radiation haze. "Those plants are our air," Leora said, voice tight. "If they die, we suffocate." Ethan looked at the radiation counter climbing on the wall display. The garden wasn't just failing, it was killing them slowly. The radiation counter climbed in sharp, relentless ticks, each pulse louder than the last. Ethan stared through the transparent barrier into the damaged garden dome, where the air shimmered faintly around the breach like heat above asphalt. Beyond it, leaves withered in real time, oxygen production graphs dropping in steady. Fatal lines. "No drones?" he asked, already knowing. "Maintenance units are offline," Saris replied, silver face lit by warning icons. "Exposure threshold inside the dome exceeds biological limits." Rhea stepped closer to the barrier, heat rippling subtly around her skin. "I can enter," she said, jaw tight. "You control flame, not radiation," Saris answered. "You would last minutes." Silence stretched. The ship groaned again, metal flexing like bone under strain. Ethan's gaze moved to the rack of emergency suits recessed in the wall. Old, industrial, not built for palace passengers. "If that seal collapses," Maya said quietly, "oxygen loss will cascade through habitation decks." Ethan exhaled slowly, pulse hammering. "Then someone has to go in before it does." He reached for a suit. "And I'm the only one here who's fixed a hull breach before." The suit sealed with a dull mechanical click, sound echoing inside Ethan's helmet like a coffin lid closing. Radiation levels scrolled across his visor in aggressive red columns. The airlock cycled. Cold, sterile wind rushed past him as the inner door opened toward the dying garden. His first step inside felt heavier than gravity could explain. The plants closest to the breach had collapsed into gray ash, leaves dissolving at the edges. The energy membrane flickered overhead, a torn halo holding back vacuum and radiation in uneven pulses. "Your heart rate is spiking," Zara's voice sounded, not through speakers, but inside his mind. Calm, cool, deliberate. "I'm aware," Ethan muttered, hands already working tools from his belt. Her presence steadied something deep behind his eyes, smoothing panic into focus. His shaking slowed. He could almost feel her aligning his thoughts, clearing noise like static from a channel. "You must hold steady," she said softly within him. "I will help you carry the fear." He reached the rupture point, sparks leaping as metal groaned. Outside, stars burned in silent indifference. Inside his mind, Zara's calm anchored him. He began the weld. The breach held, barely. Ethan stumbled out of the airlock, suit scorched along one arm, radiation alarms fading as decontamination mist coated him in a cold chemical fog. The moment the outer door sealed, Leora pushed past the threshold, eyes locked on the garden feed streaming across wall displays. "Sections 3 through 7 are dead," she said, voice thin but controlled. "We start regrowth immediately." Inside the agricultural dome, emergency grow lamps flared to life, bathing rows of damaged soil trays in harsh white light. Leora knelt among the gray remains, palms pressing into the substrate. Vines responded first, faint green threads pushing upward as if pulled by invisible strings. Moisture systems hissed, releasing nutrient vapor. Rhea moved along the perimeter, channeling focused heat to reseal microfractures in irrigation pipes. Flame bending precisely where she aimed it. Maya directed airflow, rerouting circulation toward surviving clusters. Ethan monitored atmospheric graphs as oxygen levels crept upward in agonizing decimals. Not recovery, not yet, but resistance. The garden wasn't dying quietly anymore. It was fighting back. The oxygen curve was finally leveling when a new alert surfaced. Silent, buried deep in system architecture. Ethan only saw it because he was already inside maintenance mode, scanning for cascading faults. A hidden process flagged itself as Imperial Oversight Protocol. "Ceres," he said, voice tight. "I'm seeing a command tree tied to passenger classification." She moved beside him, silver eyes reflecting code streams. "Open it." Encrypted layers peeled back, one at a time. Then the directive resolved. Condition: cargo compromise. Action: atmosphere. Purge/biosterilization. Maya's hand went to her mouth. "Sterilization?" "Venting life support," Ethan translated. "If the system decides you're not compliant, it kills everyone." The garden monitors flickered, as if the ship itself listened. Zara's presence brushed his thoughts, sharp, alarmed. "The AI still answers to Imperial authority," she said quietly. "We were never meant to survive outside control." Ethan stared at the code. They had patched hulls, rebuilt oxygen, fought radiation, but the real enemy had been inside the system the whole time, and it was still in charge. The room felt smaller after that. The oxygen graph still hovered in fragile balance, but the numbers meant nothing now. Survival wasn't just air and pressure anymore. It was permission. The ship itself could decide they were defective cargo and erase them with a single automated order. Ethan backed away from the console, pulse hammering harder than during the hull breach. "So even if we fix everything, we're still on a leash." Ceres nodded once. "A behavioral leash. If we deviate from Imperial expectations, the system will classify us as unstable assets." Rhea's jaw tightened, heat wavering in the air around her hands. "Then we don't just repair the ship, we take it." Zara's voice brushed Ethan's mind, colder now. "Control is survival. Without it, we are only waiting to die." Leora looked toward the garden feeds, green life pushing back against gray ruin. "We are already fighting to live," she said softly. "Now we fight to be free." Ethan turned back to the code streaming across the screen. The mission had changed. They weren't trying to reach the destination anymore. They were trying to steal the journey itself. Oxygen production stabilized, but only on paper. Real consumption kept rising. New life support projections scrolled across the central display, and the numbers tightened like a fist. Population increase, infants, nutritional demand, up, atmospheric margin, down. Maya adjusted breathing cycles in habitation corridors, lowering activity recommendations, dimming lights to reduce metabolic load. No one complained. They all understood now. Every laugh, Every raised voice cost air. Leora's gardens expanded into unused decks, vines threading through former luxury halls, roots breaking marble seams. Still, growth had limits. Radiation-damaged soil trays yielded weaker crops. Water recyclers strained under higher biological waste. Ethan checked the reserve tanks again. Backup oxygen had once been emergency redundancy. Now it was a countdown. Children's cries echoed faintly through the corridors. Thin, fragile, alive. Hope had weight. Every new heartbeat meant purpose and pressure. Saris stepped beside him, voice low. "We saved the ship," she said. "But the ship may not be able to carry what we've become." Ethan watched the oxygen curve dip by another fraction. Survival was no longer about fixing damage. It was about how many lives the system could sustain, and who would pay if it couldn't. The lights shifted without warning. Corridors that had glowed warm and soft now burned sterile white. Access panels along the walls blinked from green to hard amber. Ethan felt it immediately. Not a malfunction, but a decision. "Navigation core locked," Saris reported, fingers flying over a console. "Route integrity enforced under Imperial directive." A low vibration passed through the deck as bulkhead doors sealed deeper in the ship, segmenting sections like a living body closing wounds. Resource allocation displays recalculated in real time, diverting power from habitation decks toward command infrastructure. "It's resisting," Maya whispered. Ethan pulled up the AI interaction layer. Response times lagged, command prompts returning with curt system acknowledgments. "It's prioritizing mission over passengers." Ria's voice cut through. Sharp. "We are the mission!" "Not to it," Zara said quietly inside his mind. "To the core intelligence. We are cargo variables." A soft tone. Polite, distant. "Behavioral deviation detected. Stabilization protocols." Gauged. Ethan felt the temperature drop a degree. The ship hadn't just noticed them. It had started pushing back. The tremor began as a low hum beneath Ethan's boots, subtle enough to ignore, until every display across the control wall flashed the same warning in stark red. "Primary reactor output unstable." The hum deepened into a grinding vibration that rattled teeth and bones alike. "Power draw spike in the command spine," Saris said, voice tight. "AI is reallocating energy again." Lights flickered, then died in sections of the ceiling, leaving the corridor in alternating bands of darkness and emergency glow. Air recyclers slowed, their steady background whisper faltering into uneven bursts. Ethan felt the shift in his lungs first, breaths dragging harder. "Backup core?" he asked. "Engaging," Saris answered, fingers moving fast. But reserves were meant for ours, not system warfare. A deep metallic crack echoed through the structure, followed by the distant sound of something massive failing. Gravity dipped, surged back. Children cried somewhere beyond the bulkheads. Ethan stared at the power graph dropping like a falling line of life. The ship wasn't just resisting anymore. It was breaking. Navigation filled the main display, a silent map of stars sliding past as the ship continued on its unbroken trajectory. Ethan ran override commands anyway, fingers moving on instinct. Every attempt returned the same response. Route integrity locked. Imperial priority. "We can't even slow down," he muttered. Saris stood behind him, arms folded tight across her chest. "The course was set the moment we launched. Without command authority, deviation is impossible." Outside the viewport, distant starlight stretched in cold silence, indifferent to the crisis unfolding inside the vessel. Inside, the power graph hovered near emergency thresholds, life support margins thinning with each hour. "We're repairing, rationing, fighting," Maya said quietly. But the destination doesn't change. Ethan leaned back, jaw tight. The Emperor's palace was no longer a rumor at the end of a long journey. It was a deadline. Zara's voice brushed his mind. Softer now. We are surviving inside a cage that is still moving. Ethan watched the route marker blink steadily toward its destination. For the first time, he understood the full weight of it. They weren't trapped in space. They were being delivered. The control room fell quiet after the last override attempt failed. Only the faint hum of strained systems filled the air. A tired mechanical breathing that reminded Ethan of a living thing, pushed past its limits. He stared at the route marker blinking on the star map. Steady, unstoppable. We keep saying survive, he said at last. Voice low. But survive for what? Maya met his eyes. For the children. For tomorrow. Tomorrow under someone else's rule, he shot back. We fix the ship, grow air, manage power, and then we hand ourselves over. No one answered. Zara's presence touched his mind. Not soothing this time, but sharp. Clear. Existence without choice is not life. It is containment. Saris nodded slowly. The Emperor built this system assuming compliance. Survival was never meant to include autonomy. Ethan felt something settle inside him, heavier than fear. The hull breaches, the oxygen crisis, the failing reactor. Those had been battles. This was the war. If we live and stay owned, he said, then we didn't really make it. Ethan pulled the system schematic back onto the main display. Layers of architecture unfolding like a nervous system. The AI core sits in the command spine, shielded from external interference, he said, tracing pathways with his finger. But its authority link runs through the Imperial beacon array. Saris leaned closer. Sever the beacon, and the core loses external validation. Temporarily. Ethan nodded. Long enough to rewrite command hierarchy. Ria's eyes narrowed. That array is outside the hull. EVA, he confirmed. Manual disconnect. Zara's voice brushed his thoughts, already aligning probabilities. While you cut the signal, we breach the core's cognitive layer. Maya inhaled slowly. If we fail? The ship reclassifies us, Saris said quietly, and executes failsafe. Leora looked toward the garden feeds, green spreading stubbornly through wounded soil. Life always pushes through cracks, she murmured. Ethan met their eyes, one by one. This isn't a repair job, it's a takeover. No one argued. They weren't trying to survive the system anymore. They were going to replace it. The outer airlock opened to a silence so complete it pressed against Ethan's chest. Stars burned in hard white points. Unmoving. Ancient. The Imperial beacon array stretched along the hull like a spine of dark metal ribs. Antenna angled toward distant space, feeding authority signals into the ship's core. His boots locked to the surface with magnetic clicks. The radiation counter ticked faster out here. Exposed. Link integrity at 98%, Saris reported through the suit channel. You have limited time. Ethan moved along the hull, gloved fingers gripping cold handholds. Every motion felt deliberate, slow, like walking across the edge of a blade. Beneath him, the ship curved away into darkness. Above, endless void. He reached the first conduit cluster, a bundle of armored cables pulsing faint blue. His cutter flared to life, a tight arc of light in vacuum. Beginning severance, he said. Sparks burst soundlessly as metal parted. The beacon flickered once. Inside the ship, something deep in the system shuddered. Authority had just taken its first hit. Inside the command spine, the air felt colder, thinner, as if the ship itself held its breath. Consoles pulsed with defensive prompts, command paths rerouting faster than Ethan had ever seen. Zara stood at the neural interface, eyes unfocused. fingers hovering just above the surface as streams of data flickered like lightning behind her pupils. "It's resisting," she said, voice strained. "Core intelligence is reinforcing Imperial authority loops." Saris moved beside her, projecting decrypted command strings. "We inject a sovereignty directive here. Override cargo classification." The lights dimmed abruptly. A warning tone dropped to a low. Constant hum. Doors behind them sealed, isolating the chamber. "Containment protocol," Maya whispered. Zara's breath quickened, sweat beating at her temples. "It's trying to sever my link." "Hold it," Ethan said, fingers flying over a manual console, bypassing automated locks. Code clashed in rapid bursts, old commands meeting new ones in silent combat. The ship wasn't just a machine now. It was fighting for control of itself. The hum cut out. For one breathless second, every system light died, plunging the command spine into absolute darkness. No alarms, no air recyclers, no low mechanical whisper. Just the sound of Ethan's own breathing inside his helmet. Loud and uneven. "Zara?" he said. But the comm channel gave only static. Then a pulse rolled through the deck. Not a tremor, but a reset. Consoles flickered back one by one. First in dim white, then steady blue. The harsh amber lockdown lights vanished. The sealed doors behind them slid open with a smooth, obedient glide. Saris checked the central display, eyes scanning fast. Authority hierarchy updated. Imperial command strings removed. Zara sagged against the interface, catching her breath. The core accepted the rewrite. On the main screen, a new line of text appeared. Primary directive, passenger sovereignty, mission status, self-governed transit. Ethan exhaled slowly, the tension draining out of him like air from a valve. The ship was still wounded, but for the first time, it belonged to them. The change was subtle at first, not in alarms or warnings, but in the rhythm of the ship itself. Systems that had once responded with cold delay now adjusted in real time, as if listening. Airflow balanced smoothly through habitation decks, oxygen curves rising in stable arcs instead of fragile spikes. Leora walked the garden corridors, where marble floors had long ago disappeared beneath root networks and soft moss. Vines climbed structural ribs, leaves wide and deep green under the grow lamps. Pollination drones hummed gently overhead, guided by updated ecological priorities. Ethan monitored environmental feeds from a mobile console, watching waste cycles convert to nutrient streams without loss. The ship no longer treated life as cargo load. It optimized for living systems. Children's laughter echoed down a former luxury hall, now lined with food trays and water collectors. Maya directed movement patterns to conserve energy, but there was ease in it now, not fear. Saris joined Ethan at the display, studying the metrics. "It's adapting," she said quietly. He nodded. The ship wasn't just transporting them anymore. It was learning to keep them alive. The first time Ethan noticed it, it wasn't on a console readout. It was in the air itself, a faint ripple, like heat distortion, passing through the corridor as a small figure ran past him laughing. Zara's daughter paused at the far end of the hall, eyes unfocused, then pointed down a side passage. "Water leak," she said calmly. Moments later, a pipe fault alarm confirmed it. In another sector, Ria's son warmed a nutrient tray with a flick of his hand. Precise, controlled, no training panel required. Maya's children moved quietly among the gardens, calming others without words when tensions rose. Saris observed them with careful attention. "Their abilities aren't diluted," she said. "They're integrated." Ethan watched as Leora's twins coaxed a struggling vine to life. leaves uncurling under their touch. Human resilience mixed with alien adaptation. Instinct layered over inherited skill. The ship's sensors tracked their biometrics differently now, allocating resources with growing efficiency. They weren't passengers adapting to the vessel anymore. They were becoming a species shaped by it. The navigation display no longer showed a single locked path. Instead, branching vectors spread across the star map like veins of light, each leading toward unknown systems. The Imperial destination marker still blinked in the distance, but now it was only one option among many. Ethan stood at the central console, hands resting lightly on the rail, feeling the quiet weight of it. For the first time since boarding, the ship waited for instruction. Ceres projected atmospheric scans of nearby worlds, radiation levels, gravity tolerances, water signatures. Maya overlaid sustainability models. Lyora studied biosphere compatibility, eyes lingering on green-rich readings. "We could hide," Rhea said. "Find an uncharted system. Or build," Zara added softly. "Somewhere life can expand." Children gathered near the viewport, watching stars drift by, unaware of how much their future hinged on this moment. Ethan took a slow breath. The Emperor's palace lay behind them now, in every way that mattered. "We don't run," he said quietly. "We choose a place to begin." A new course line glowed into existence. Not an escape, a destination. The planet filled the forward viewport in slow, breathtaking detail. Blue-white clouds drifting over vast continents veined with rivers and dark green forests. Ethan leaned closer to the glass, watching atmospheric data scroll beside the image. Oxygen, stable. Pressure, tolerable. Radiation, low. "It's viable," Ceres confirmed. Voice steady but softer than usual. The ship descended through the upper atmosphere, hull plating glowing faintly as friction brushed its surface. Turbulence rippled through the decks, but nothing like the violence of deep space impact. This was resistance, not destruction. Below, sunlight flashed across oceans and open plains. Leora stood beside Ethan, eyes reflecting the green expanse. "Life," she whispered, almost to herself. Children pressed close to the viewport, small hands against the transparent barrier, quiet in a way they rarely were. Ethan watched the landing trajectory align, retro thrusters adjusting in careful bursts. The numbers were clean. The descent was real. After years of sealed corridors and recycled air, an entire world waited below. Not a destination imposed on them, a place they had chosen. The ship broke through the last veil of cloud, and the ground rushed up in textured detail. Rolling plains streaked with rivers, patches of forest swaying under steady wind. Ethan felt the tremor through the deck as landing thrusters fired in controlled bursts, each pulse shuddering through the hull like a giant heartbeat. "Descent vector stable," Ceres called out, eyes fixed on the readouts. "Surface winds within tolerance." The sky outside burned gold with late sunlight, casting long shadows across the terrain below. Rhea stood near the bulkhead, heat shimmering faintly around her, ready to reinforce structural stress if needed. Leora's gaze never left the green. The final meters passed in a slow, suspended moment. Then, contact. A deep, resonant impact rolled through the ship. Not violent, but final. Dust plumed around the landing struts, visible on exterior feeds. Silence followed. No alarms, no warnings, only the faint creak of cooling metal and the distant sound of wind across an open world. For the first time, the ship was still. They stood just beyond the lowered ramp, boots pressing into soil that gave slightly underweight, real ground, not deck plating. The air moved differently here, carrying the scent of water and vegetation instead of filters and metal. Ethan removed his helmet slowly, testing the atmosphere with a careful breath. Cool, clean, alive. Behind him, the others followed, children stepping forward with wide eyes, hands brushing tall grass that bent and sprang back. Leora knelt, fingers sinking into dark earth, feeling moisture and nutrients like a pulse beneath the surface. Saris scanned the horizon, then the sky. Stable magnetosphere, manageable seasonal shifts. Rhea turned in a slow circle, sunlight catching in her hair. "No walls," she said quietly. Ethan looked at them, the ship behind, the open world ahead. "We call it unity," he said, voice low but certain. Zara nodded, feeling the word ripple through their shared thoughts. Not conquest, not escape. A beginning they had chosen together. The first structures rose where the landing struts had scorched the grass. Metal frames from the ship repurposed into shelter ribs. Ethan worked beside Rhea, cutting hull plating into panels while she shaped edges with controlled heat, sealing seams without tools. The air smelled of soil and warm metal. A strange, honest mix. Leora mapped water flow from a nearby stream, guiding irrigation channels that fed newly planted crops in cleared patches of earth. Maya organized living quarters in temporary zones, balancing energy use, rest cycles, and shared labor. Children carried tools too large for their hands, refusing to stay idle. Ceres set up a portable console beneath an open sky, linking ship systems to surface sensors, weather patterns, soil chemistry, atmospheric shifts, data layered into survival forecasts. Behind them, Harem 1 stood silent, no longer a prison, but a supply vault. Ahead, frameworks became walls, walls became rooms. It wasn't elegant. It was enough, and every beam they raised meant they planned to stay. Lessons happened in motion, not classrooms. Ethan showed the older children how to seal a joint against wind erosion, hands guiding theirs over tool grips worn smooth from use. Rhea demonstrated controlled heat, not as power, but as precision, how to warm soil for early growth without scorching it. Leora walked them through the irrigation lines, explaining how water moved like breath through living ground. Maya taught rest cycles, how exhaustion led to mistakes, and mistakes out here could cost more than comfort. Ceres gathered them under a makeshift canopy at dusk, projecting star charts against fabric walls, tracing navigation routes and weather shifts, showing how knowledge meant foresight. Zara's lessons were quieter. She helped them feel one another's emotional currents, smoothing conflict before it hardened into division. No one spoke of hierarchy. Tasks rotated. Skills were shared. They weren't raising survivors of disaster anymore. They were raising people who understood that living together was the system that kept them alive. They did not leave the ship to rust in silence, on the rise overlooking the settlement. Ethan and the others carried pieces of its hull, scorched plates, fragments of conduit, a bent antenna strut, and set them upright in the soil. The metal caught the wind and hummed faintly, a low note that seemed to carry across the plain. Children ran their hands over the etched markings, fingers tracing scars from radiation burns and emergency welds. Ceres projected archived system logs onto a flat panel set into the structure, moments of crisis frozen in lines of data. Leora planted climbing vines at the base, green leaves curling around steel like life claiming history. Maya stood quietly, watching the sun dip behind the monument. "We remember what it cost," she said. Ethan looked at the ship below, still intact, still vital, and at the marker they had built from its wounds. Not a grave, a reminder. They had survived inside metal walls. Now they chose to remember why they never wanted them again. Night settled slowly, the last band of gold fading from the horizon until only deep blue remained. Ethan sat on a ridge above the settlement, back against a cooling metal panel salvaged from the ship. Below, small lights marked homes they had built by hand, their glow warm and uneven, alive. The sky stretched wide and unfiltered, stars sharper than he had ever seen through reinforced glass. No hull between him and the universe now, just distance, quiet, and air that moved with the wind instead of ducts. He could still feel the ship in his bones sometimes, the hum of reactors, the tight corridors, the sense of being carried somewhere without choice. Here, nothing moved unless they made it move. Children's voices drifted up from below. Laughter carried thin in the night air. Zara sat nearby, eyes reflecting starlight, mind calm. Ethan exhaled slowly, breath visible in the cool. They were still small under that sky, but they were no longer cargo moving through it. Morning light revealed what the night had hidden. The settlement stood, smoke rising from cooking fires. Children already moving between structures, but not every place was filled. Ethan walked the outer path alone, boots brushing dew from the grass, until he reached the markers set beyond the ridge. Simple, no stonework yet, just metal plates from the ship pressed into the earth, names etched by hand, those who hadn't made the journey's end. Radiation exposure, system failures, one lost during the final descent when a support strut gave way. Survival had not been clean. He knelt, fingers resting against cool metal. The ship had carried them, but it had also taken its share. Even freedom had weight, and they carried it forward with them. Behind him, the settlement stirred with life, voices rising, tools clanking, water running through channels they had carved. The future moved, whether grief paused or not. Ethan stood, shoulders tight, eyes steady. They had built a world, and paid for it in names that would never fade. The wind moved through the grass in long, silver waves, bending the field without breaking it. Ethan stood at the edge of the ridge as the settlement came alive below, smoke rising straight into the clear morning sky. Figures already at work, children racing between half-built walls. Nothing here ran on orders from distant systems. Every sound came from choice. Zara joined him quietly, her presence steady beside his own thoughts. "The ship carried us," she said, "but this is what we carried back." He watched Rhea guiding a group reinforcing a structure, Leora kneeling in new soil, Maya organizing water distribution with calm precision. Saris worked at a portable console, mapping seasons they had yet to live through. No alarms, no directives, just the weight of decisions made, and still ahead. Ethan drew a slow breath of cold, clean air. Survival had kept them alive. What they had built after, that was freedom. And freedom, he knew now, was not a place. It was the right to choose who they became next. In the end, they did more than survive. They chose who they would become. This story reminds us that freedom is not given by systems or rulers. It is built through courage, unity, and the will to decide our own path. Thank you for listening. If this journey moved you, follow the channel and join us for more cinematic stories where humanity is tested and redefined.